God bless everybody today. It's January 4th of 2021. You can find all my articles on my eschatology page at End of Day Survival at endofdaysurvival.com. It has all my articles, videos, my 117-step calendar of events, which goes from the beginning of Revelation through each and every step to the end. Like I say, it's got videos, different things that I put together. I just did a video on Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's statue, so if you get a chance, please watch that. So in this study, we're going to add Jeremiah to this chart that I built. And this is the chart that includes Daniel 8, Daniel 12, and Psalm 90:10 prophecies, and how Jeremiah's prophecies will affect this timeline as we move forward in the next 7 years. So what we're going to look at is how Jeremiah 32 through 52 can be added to this chart, and that Jeremiah's experiences or what he went through in the past will actually reflect and give you time and date markers in the future. I'm going to try to show you how this works. So if we go to chapter 32 in Jeremiah, it indicates that there's a king named Zedekiah. And I believe that he is the president right now, the president of Israel, or in this case it says Judah. So when Jeremiah is talking about Zedekiah in the past, we have to look at how these prophecies of latter days are going to affect us in the future. And so when you look at Zedekiah, I believe that he lines up with today's president of Israel, which is Rivlin. So the president of Israel right now is this gentleman here named Reuven Rivlin. And I believe that he is Zedekiah in Jeremiah, not in the past, but it's coming up today and what's going on today on the ground. So this Rivlin, this president of Israel, is a one-term president. He came in July 24th of 2014, and he will be replaced in 2021. I believe that Netanyahu will be elected in as the new president, and so we'll see how that goes, but I believe that is what will happen there. But if I'm right, Zedekiah would be this present president of Israel, which will be replaced in 2021. I also believe that if you go from past to future and you look at the king of Jehoiakim, he is Netanyahu. So if you go into Jeremiah 35, he indicates a king of Israel or Judah, since they're combined today. At the time they were separated, but today they're the same. Judah and Israel, they're the same. He talks about this king Jehoiakim. And I think that's very important because there's a man that reflects that today. So I believe in the future, Benjamin Netanyahu will reflect Jehoiakim. And he's not the leader of Israel right now. Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel. But I believe that when Rivlin, or however you say that, is taken away, because he can only be elected for a 7-year period. So Reuven came in 2014, he has to leave in 2021. Netanyahu will be probably, he is the runner-up right now as far as I can tell. Everybody seems to be falling off the map, and so I believe the prime minister or the president of Israel in 2021 will be Benjamin Netanyahu. And so this is extremely important to line him up with this king named Jehoiakim. And if we go back and look at Jeremiah 32, we'll notice that Jehoiakim, or Zedekiah, Jehoiakim, all these kings of Judah, these two kings, are going to deal with Nebuchadnezzar, or the king of Babylon, or the Assyrian. And I believe that today is Erdogan of Turkey. Now, I've talked about Erdogan of Turkey for 3 or 4 years, that he would be the white horseman, that will break the seals, that will bring the sorrows onto us, that he has already started to do that when he broke the first seal on Yom Kippur. I'm going to show you that on the chart as we move forward. He is going to play a major pivotal role in what is coming. He will be the catalyst that changes the Middle East. And I think it's extremely important that this man, Erdogan, originally came into power in 2002 when he was elected as the Prime Minister of Turkey. Okay, and that went to 2014. So in 2014, Rivlin of Israel came into office, and so he's the president of Israel, and Erdogan then is elected as president of Turkey in the same year. But it's important that he was elected originally the Prime Minister of Turkey in 2002, and that's important. I'll show you later why that number matters. So the 2002 has to be looked at, and it will then bring you back to another number that I believe that I can prove how this works through the calendar on my chart. And I know that's a little confusing right now, but hopefully as we move forward, I'll be able to explain that better. But the main thing you need to understand is Erdogan became Prime Minister of Turkey in 2002, and in 2014 he became the president, and so now he is the leader of Turkey. And like I say, Netanyahu's not the leader of Turkey, of Israel yet. He is going to be ushered in 2021. So that will then make him the leader of Israel. And so at that time, Rivlin and Netanyahu will both be leaders of Israel, one a former and one a new. Rivlin's the older leader, and Netanyahu will become the new leader in 2021. So in Jeremiah, he gives us a lot of what I call time or date stamps. And you're going to see this in a number of the chapters. And what I mean by that is if you look at, let's say, Jeremiah 32, it indicates the 10th year of Zedekiah, the king of Judah, which is the king of Israel, in the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar. So he's trying to show us something here as he works through these chapters and explains that these years of these Israel kings, or the kings of Judah, which Judah and Israel are the same today. So if I'm talking Judah, I'm talking Israel today. And it reflects on Nebuchadnezzar's years also. And so I think that's extremely important. So when you work down through the chapters, I haven't included them all because I just wanted to bring out the date stamps that I'm talking about. So like in Jeremiah 36, he talks about the 4th year of Jehoiakim. Well, I believe that's Netanyahu. Whereas if you come up here and you look at Zedekiah, I believe that's Rivlin, and Nebuchadnezzar is Erdogan. So if you follow this pattern, and you may not agree with any of this, this is really new. I've been working on this for a long time, but I think once you watch the whole video and see how this all lines up, you will start to understand that this chart that I'm building will matter, and it gives us very explicit information about what is coming in the near future, in the next 7 years. And so I think it's important that we look at all these date timestamps. So if you go down through here and you realize, well, he's showing us that in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, so in the 4th year of Netanyahu, potentially, this is going to happen. And that's why I've got these date stamps up here. And I'm going to go over some of this as I move through. And then the 9th year of Zedekiah, which is the older king, Rivlin, in the 10th month, that Nebuchadnezzar, or the Babylonian king, comes against Jerusalem and besieges it. Okay, so as you look through here, you'll start to realize, well, why is he giving us these date stamps? And why is he effectively putting them up against Nebuchadnezzar, so we can sort of line this up? So I think as we move into especially 52, which is a summary of 32 forward, it reflects these dates. And so we're going to understand something extremely important here. Now, one thing that I think we need to look at is in Jeremiah 52, it indicates that Zedekiah, which I believe is Revlin, will reign for 11 years in Jerusalem. So if that is the case, from 2014 to 2025, he will be a president. Okay, but something's going to happen to him in 2025, and that's going to change. I'm going to try to show you what that is. But like I say, I want to work through this. I know it's a little awkward, but I think as I move through it, you'll start to see what I'm talking about here. So we're going to move from chapter 32 through 52 with a summary that's on 52 that's extremely important. As you move back and forth between the summary of chapter 52 into the past chapters of 32 up to 52, you're going to realize you have to look at them all so that you can see that there's actually dates that move back between the summary and the actual events that are occurring in Jeremiah itself. And so I'm going to try to show you how these things are occurring and why I think they're important. So in Jeremiah 32, he talks about the 10th year of Zedekiah, which I believe is Revlin, which is the president right now in Israel, and that this is the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar. So if you go into the 10th year of Zedekiah, you'll realize that if he was placed into office in 2014, and he's going to be replaced by Netanyahu in 2021, that the 10th year of his reign, because he's still a president, he's still alive, it's like a former president, he's still a president, his 10th year would be in 2024. So that's sort of how this works. Okay, but as you move through here, you're going to start to see he's giving you the certain kings and that they fall in line with what's coming up. And so if you look at Jeremiah 36, look at that. In the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which is Netanyahu, that is 2025. So that's sort of interesting. So Revlin is brought in 2014 and has to be removed as a president in 2021 because he can only have one 7-year term. And who does he bring in? He brings in Netanyahu. And in the 4th year, because he's elected in 2021, would be 2025. So that's extremely important. As we move down through here, you're going to realize that these things start to seem to matter. And maybe not. I mean, I'm still looking at these connections to see whether they actually do line up, but they seem to. And this is what I'm trying to show you, is that I believe these connections of Jeremiah work with Daniel, work with Ezekiel, work with Revelation, work with all of, Isaiah, all these different prophets. So as we move into Jeremiah 39, it indicates this. In the 9th year of Zedekiah, the king of Judah, in the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and all his armies against Israel, and they besieged it. So in the 9th year of the first king of Israel, which would be Rivlin, this would be from 2014 at 9 years. That takes us to the 10th month of October, which would be October of 2023. And that Nebuchadnezzar will besiege the city until the 11th year of Rivlin or Zedekiah, and that at the end of that, on the 4th month, 9th day, the city then would be broken up. And that might be that treaty where the nation, the treaty of that Trump put together, the dividing of the land of Israel might occur on that specific time here. So this is extremely important. This is the 4th month of the 9th of the month in the 11th year. And so if you look at that, that would be April 9th of 2025. So I went ahead and changed that date so you could see that date, and that if the 9th year is in 2023, because Rivlin was brought into office in 2014. So the 9th year would be 2023. The 11th year would be 2025. If you keep going down through here, you'll start to see a lot of dates. Now, Jeremiah 41 talks about 7 months. This is something that I want to maybe address later, but it doesn't really affect what I'm talking about this very moment. As you get into Jeremiah 45, it talks about the 4th year of Jehoiakim again. We're talking about Netanyahu. So if he's brought in 2021, 4 years later, be 2025. And then if you get into 52, it really changes everything, because we're talking about a summary. And so if you look at the summary of 52 and then you start to manipulate it back into the older books, you'll start to realize from 32 forward, you'll start to realize that he actually adds dates into some of these books. And so we want to look at how that's affecting us. So if we look at Jeremiah 52, in the very first verse, he says something extremely important, I believe. He says that Zedekiah, even though in his day was 20 years old, he reigned for 11 years in Jerusalem. So if you look at Revlon today, if he reigns for 11 years, that would be 2014 to 2025. And I believe that as we move forward, I'm going to show you that something happens to this president of Israel, this Revlin, in 2025, if you break these books down properly. So sort of remember that as we move in, this Revlin, this Zedekiah, this first president of Israel, that's getting replaced by Netanyahu in 2021, is going to have a disastrous event occur to him in 2025. And I will explain that as we move forward. So Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. And in the 9th year, which would be in 2023, from 2014 to 9 years would be 2023, in the 10th month of the 10th day of the month, so 10/10 of 23, the king of Babylon came in with all his armies against Jerusalem and laid siege and built siege works against and around about them. So Israel, in October 10th of 2023, is being attacked by Nebuchadnezzar or Erdoğan of Turkey, and he's laying siege upon the city, okay? And the siege, as it indicated up here, that this siege would last until the 11th year of Zedekiah, or Rivlin, which would be 2025. Because if you go from 2014, 11 years would be 2025. And on the 9th day of the fourth month, we're talking about this 2025, a famine was so severe in the city that no food were found in the people of the land. And so this drought, this famine, this pestilence, this locust event that's occurring has been going on for some time. Okay? So if you look at this and you go, wow, so the city's being besieged, and in the ninth day in the fourth month, we have a famine that's so severe that they can't find any food. Okay? And then they breach the city and they flow into the city, and the Chaldeans, which are the Ottomans, I believe, in this case, pursue this king, overtake him in the plains of Jericho, and all the army scatter him. He captures the king. They bring him to Babylon, to the king of Babylon in this province or this town in the land of Hamath, and that he passed sentence upon him, and he slew his sons, and he takes his eyes out, and he imprisons him and takes him to Babylon. Okay, so that's pretty heavy if that's really going to happen to this president of Israel, that's the president of Israel today, that's going to be replaced by Netanyahu in the future. And it indicates right here in the 5th month on the 10th day, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar. So he's giving you these dates. Okay, so we know that that is the case, because if you go to Jeremiah 32, he indicates that the 10th year of Rivlin or Zedekiah is the 18th year. So he's trying to give you these tie-ins between Nebuchadnezzar and Joachim and Zedekiah, so that you can see that they all line up together. Okay, so if you look at Jeremiah 32, it's telling you that in this year they're besieging Jerusalem. And if you go into Jeremiah 52, as you move down into the verses here, it indicates that the king of Babylon will, around October 10th of 2023, or the 9th year of Revlin, in the 10th month, the 10th day, 10/10 of 23, will come against Jerusalem. So if you go back to 32, you realize that he's under siege in 2024, and that this is going to occur until the 11th year of 2025. And that after, in 2025, it's really important that this king of Revlin, this first president that was brought in 2014, his reign will end in 11 years, as he indicates up here. Okay, he reigns for 11 years. And so the 11th year would be the 2025. And what happens to him? He's pursued. They're under attack. He's pursued to the plains of Jericho. He's captured. His sons are killed. His eyes are taken out, and he's removed to Babylon. So this is extremely important. And in this same year of 2025, we see that they're having that major, famine in 2025 prior to all this happening. And we were talking about, Joel 1 and Joel 2, where Joel 1 is the famine that goes in and takes the fortunes of Israel, and then Joel 2 is Gog of Ezekiel 38-39, and that he will take 10 nations into Israel. So I think these things all line up if you actually look at them. And I believe if you even look at Jeremiah 52, it lines up Erdogan. So if the Revlin is captured and taken away in 2025, if you go down into verse 30, it says, in the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar, he takes these captive Jews away. Okay, so if 2025 is the time when Revlin is taken away, 23 years, subtract that from 25, that takes you to 2002. And what is 2002? That is the year that Erdogan becomes the prime minister of Turkey. And so I believe that links us back that Nebuchadnezzar is Erdogan of Turkey, that when he captures this King Revlin, takes him back to Israel, that this is 23 years into his reign, from the beginning of the prime minister of 2002 to 2025. And so that links us back to Erdogan. And so all these players link up. If you look at the first king and how Revlin relates to the second king, which is Netanyahu, and how both of them seem to correspond in alignment with Nebuchadnezzar, you start to realize that, wow, this might be a modern day prophecy actually being fulfilled, that happened in the past, but that's going to reoccur in the future. And in Jeremiah 25, it says something extremely important. In the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which I believe is Netanyahu, which will be in 2025, this is the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. That's a really strange thing to say, since Nebuchadnezzar has been affecting both these kings of Israel throughout the time they're both on the ground, in the past as well as he's going to have in the future. So why would he say that in the 4th year of Netanyahu, this is the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar? Because I've talked about this destruction of Gog at the end of 2023, 2024, and that we will see an Antichrist rise from this. And so if you look at the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which is Netanyahu, that would be 2025. Okay? And so if you start to look at this, it matters. It all matters. And so when we get into this, I'm going to start to show you this chart. I want you to start to realize that 24 to 25 really matters. And so if Erdogan dies in 2023 through the 6th seal, and they have a 7-month burial at the 2024, then the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar would be between 24 and 25. Okay, so that's sort of how I got into that. And so I want to show you this chart that I'm talking about, and hopefully I can line some of this stuff up for you. So I sort of hope you see where I'm going with this. The two presidents of Israel, the one in place now, which is Revlin, and Netanyahu, which will be the new president in 2021, is being affected here. And Erdogan, or the Assyrian, or Nebuchadnezzar in this case, which from past to future is Erdogan, he's going to affect these two kings as we move forward. Now, if you go into the chart that I built, I've done many videos about this chart. We're talking about the meaning and the timing of Daniel 8, 12, Psalm 90, 10. And now I'm adding Jeremiah, okay, mainly 32 through 52, but it goes through the whole book because it actually comes back and forth. Jeremiah moves back and forth a lot, so I want to show you how that works. So I've modified this chart so that it adds all of Jeremiah's date stamps into today's events. Now, I've said for a while, and everything that I'm looking at reinforces what I've been saying for the last 3 to 4 years, and I can't seem to disprove it, which is what I've been trying to do when I had the image of Gog come in my head. I knew that he was Erdogan and that he was the white horseman and he was the catalyst that were going to bring the sorrows and the birth pains upon the world, and that he would end up creating a Daniel 8 effect with the attack of Iran, the absorption of the Kurds in Iran into the Ottoman Empire that he's forming, and that by the time he gets to Israel, he'll have formed 10 nations, and then he'll attack Israel, and I'll sort of show you how that all happens. First of all, I said for a while now, I believe that on October 9th of 2019, on Yom Kippur, Erdogan invaded Syria. This was a major event. It was the first real invasion. He's done a number of invasions. This is the first invasion that's going to continue, and he was trying to create that 30-mile buffer zone. Okay? And then I had made a comment, if you've been following any of my stuff, that on September 19th and 20th, on that Saturday, they blew the shofar on Rosh Hashanah in Israel, and outside on the rooftops and in the streets and anywhere that they shouldn't have been blowing it, except for inside the actual temple, which isn't built yet. And that's the 70th blowing, and that's important because the 69th blowing was when they had the destruction of the second temple. So this is important. I think this was a warning to Israel and Judah, and that this would unleash the king of the north, or Turkey, and that Jeremiah 4:5-9 tells us that this is going to bring judgment against Israel and Judah when they do this. And so this has been a ramping up. And so, like I said, back in October, we saw the corona come out of China. Erdogan was released. He's the white horseman, the first seal. He's starting to bring all the sorrows and birth pains into the world. A year later, look where we're at. You know, a couple of years later, we're starting to move into 2021 here now. It's been a year and a half, and things are really starting to break down. Now, if you've been following my stuff, I've said for a while the 2300 days of Daniel start from the cleansing of the temple. And if you are lost at this point, you need to go back and look at my older videos, because I'm gonna blow through a lot of this stuff because there's just too much here. Okay, so from the cleansing of the sanctuary, 2300 days back takes you to June 30th of 2021, and this is when I believe the ramping up of Daniel 8 will start to happen. Okay, and so I'm going to take you to this bottom little chart first, and then I'm going to move you up to the top. So why is this important? So I've been talking for 3 or 4 years now about how Daniel 8 will be the first cog to drop. It'll be the first major event that it comes up in the near future that's going to affect us. And what is this? This is the ram and goat war. Okay? And what's going to happen is the Kurds are going to align with Iran. And once this alignment happens, Turkey will run over and destroy them. This will then absorb Iran and the Kurds into the new Ottoman Empire, or new Ottoman Empire. Erdogan will be crowned then as the new Ottoman Emperor. He's given the white horseman's crown. He's given a crown. The white horseman does not have a crown to start with. He is given a crown, and then he goes forth conquering and to conquer. And he has a bow and he has arrows. I get tired of hearing about he doesn't have any arrows. You can't shoot a bow without arrows, and you can't conquer without arrows. And he doesn't have to tell you every little detail. You got to just figure out he's got arrows. Okay, and that Joel 1 will happen prior to this, Ezekiel 5:12, the third of the Jews die by famine, a third of the Jews die by sword, and a third are taken away as a remnant into the hidden place. So Joel 1's going to start to happen. We're going to start to see the decimation of Israel's fortunes. The 10 nations of Muslims will start to form from Daniel 8. It will morph into Ezekiel 38:39. Joel 2 starts to occur, and also Daniel 11, because they get into Egypt. And once they get into Egypt, they're pulled back by a hook to Israel. They attack into Israel. They die on the sixth seal, because Erdogan is the first seal. All his nations of Ezekiel 38:39 will be destroyed on the sixth seal. We have 7 months of burials. We have the seventh seal and the selection of 144,000. You have the first 4 trumps sound, which destroy a third of the earth, which I believe are the communist areas. The 10 nation horns from Ezekiel 38:39 are consolidated into 4 regions, as Daniel 8 through 12 tells us. The 5th trumpet opens, the bottomless pit opens, the 6th trumpet sounds, the Antichrist and the false prophet rises. The Antichrist throws the other 3 regions away or over, and then that becomes a new diversified beast kingdom. And so how does Jeremiah affect us with the calendar that I already put together? And if you go into here, you're going to start to really see Jeremiah could literally show us a roadmap to what is coming. So if you go back into the chart, I was just in this section here, and now we're moving up into this section here, and we're going to start to move this way, okay? I want to show you how Jeremiah's date stamps are going to affect us today based on the first king of Israel, the second king of Israel, and Nebuchadnezzar, Erdogan of Turkey, and how these players affect us as we move forward in the next 7 years. So June 30th was the start of the 2300 days of Daniel 8. We're going to start to see the Kurds push down towards Iran, join with Iran, and then Turkey's going to crush them. And I believe that's going to start to ramp up around June 30th of 2021. Now, I think it's extremely important that the new sabbatical year starts on September 7th of 2021. This starts the 7-year Shemitah cycle that ends in the 6 years ends in 2027, with the last year going from 2027 into 2028. And so I believe you're talking about the 6-day creation cycle and the 7th year, which is the millennial year, which is the year of rest. This all matters if you get into the creation cycle. And so on this sabbatical year, if you go back in the history, when the second temple was destroyed, it happened during the Shemitah year. And so we had the Shemitah blown, this new sabbatical year come in, and then the fortunes of Israel were removed, the destruction of the second temple in 70 AD, and this will be a similar occurrence, because what's going to happen is Jerusalem and Israel is going to start to wane here, and we're going to start to see not the Babylonian rise, but the Ottoman rise here. As the fortunes of Israel wane, the Ottomans are going to start to advance. We're going to see that new crowning of the Ottoman emperor called Erdogan right now. And if you go back down here, you realize that Daniel 8's occurred at this point. And so Daniel 8's occurred, the destruction of Iran's occurred. We started to see the crowning of this new Ottoman king, or the white horseman. And I believe that Erdogan will receive his crown at the tomb of Suleiman Shah, and that he will be christened there. And then we get into the fall equinox of 2022. We end that first sabbatical year, and then things start getting crazy based on my chart. Okay, so as we start to move into Jeremiah, we start to move into those date stamps. And we talk about, we were talking about that locust, that famine back in 2025. Well, I believe that that starts in Joel 1, and so that's going to start to ramp up prior to that as we start to see the forces of Gog move into Israel. And so I believe we're going to start to see a locust plague hit Israel. Now we're into the end of 2022. We're starting to move into 2023 here. So between 22 and 23, we're going to start to see a locust event occur. And then we start those date stamps in Jeremiah. Okay? And I think this is extremely important. So on October 10th of 2023, Erdogan besieges Jerusalem. Okay? And that's Jeremiah 39:1 and Joel 2. Okay? And October 10th of 2023, Erdogan gives the authority for 1 hour or 15 days to go into Jerusalem and destroy them or take them over. And I believe that this is going to cause his destruction, because if you move 15 days forward or 1 hour, he gives authority for 1 hour. They go in, they try to take the temple. God destroys them on the sixth seal. Erdogan and all his armies die on the sixth seal by the wrath of Jesus, or the wrath of the Lamb, which is in Revelation 6:16. We have 7 months of burial of Erdogan and his armies in the valley of Ham Gog. That's Ezekiel 39:11 through 16. He also burns the weapons for 7 years, alluding to the start of tribulation, or coming up to that 7-year tribulation period. And that all these armies will be buried for 7 months in this valley. Then we have the seventh seal is broken. A half an hour of silence, 144,000 are selected. That's Revelation 7. And look at this. This is really interesting. I keep telling everybody, watch the 4 winds. The 4 winds are being held back until when? The 6th trumpet. And when the 6th trumpet is blown, what happens? The Antichrist and the false prophet rise. And so the first 4 trumpets start to sound. It destroys a third of the world, which I believe are the communist areas of Russia and China, and some of that area over there. The 5th trumpet, or the bottomless pit, opens, and the scorpions come up and sting the men without the seal of God for 5 months. And then the 6th trump is the rise of Antichrist and the false prophet in Revelation 13 or 9:13 through 21. It's also Revelation 13, the beast of the sea, the beast of the earth. And that by the March of 20th of 2024, we have that spring equinox. We start to see Antichrist start to be a major factor on the ground. And so look at this calendar and how it's set up. So I'm zooming back out so you can see what I'm talking about here. So if Erdogan invaded Syria on October 1st or October 9th of 2019 on Yom Kippur, he started to break the seals. He's the catalyst that brings the sorrows and the birth pains into the world, and that will occur until the signing of the treaty. Then we go into tribulation. We get to abomination. Then we start great tribulation. Those are the demarcation points between the sorrows, tribulation, and great tribulation. Okay, the sorrows run from the breaking of the first seal all the way to the signing of the 7-year covenant of death with the nations. And then once the signing of the the signing of the covenant of death occurs, 1260 days occur to abomination or desolation of abomination, and then we have the start of great tribulation to the end, okay? And then we move into the millennial thing. Okay, so but if he broke the first seal on October 9th, we start to see that warning that I was talking about on Rosh Hashanah where they blow the shofar. That was the warning that he's going to bring the king of the north against them and that he's unleashed a judgment against Israel. Okay? It's that simple. I'm going to blow this up just a little so you can see what I'm talking about here. So we've got that blowing of the shofar, the 2300 days start, and then look at this pattern of dates that are coming up. And that's what I mean by Jeremiah is giving you all kinds of insight here and what he's showing you. And so after June 30th, we start getting into September. That's the new start of the sabbatical year. The fortunes of Israel is removed. Back in the old days, the second temple was destroyed, but what that's doing is that's showing you that the Babylonians are rising. In this case, in this day, the Ottomans will rise. He will gain his crown. Daniel 8 has occurred here, and so Israel or Iran and the Kurds are destroyed, and then Erdogan receives his Ottoman crown. And we start to see that locust effect, because what's going to happen after Iran is destroyed, he's going to start driving towards Egypt. And as he's driving towards Egypt, he's going to have a locust event occur prior to him getting into Jerusalem. And so Joel 1 is extremely important, understanding that a third of them die by famine, a third of them die by the sword, and a third are taken away to the remnant, to the hidden place. But then, we get into Jeremiah's dates, and they fit in and layer perfectly with this chart that I've been talking about. And that's why I've been waiting on trying to get Jeremiah done, because it's extremely complicated and complex, and it adds a lot of depth to this conversation, but I want to present it properly. So on October 10th of 2023, based on Jeremiah 39:1 and Joel 2, we are going to see Erdogan besiege Jerusalem. And that he will give these nations, these 10 nations, the authority for 1 hour or 15 days to go into Israel and ransack it, take the spoils, destroy it, whatever. So 15 days later, or 1 hour of power, 1 hour of God is 15 days in our time. I've got that broken down at the bottom of the chart here. That this would be October 25th of 2023, and that he would die on the 6th seal, and that we would start to see a burial event of 7 months. And that's extremely important. So if you go from October, November, December, January, February, March, and April, it's amazing. So November, December, January, February, March, 5 months before we get into April. What's the 5 months reflect? The scorpions that come out of the hole. Okay. So the scorpions come out and they sting the men for 5 months. And then the 6th trumpet happens, and the rise of Antichrist and the false prophet happens, and the 4 winds are released. Well, when were the 4 winds held? On the 7th seal. Those 4 winds are being held back until the 6th trumpet is blown, which was when the Antichrist comes out and the false prophet comes out, and the 4 winds are released. And he tells us, because Satan now is being thrown or cast out of heaven, that they should relish this day, because he's not in heaven anymore. But woe to the heavens of the earth. And what does it say right after that? Right after these 4 trumps, right before the 5th trump happens, we have that warning of Revelation 8:13. Watch the 3 last trumps with the 3 attached woes. Why? Because the 5th trumpet is the bottomless pit opens, the The sixth trumpet is Antichrist comes up with the false prophet and rises. And the seventh trumpet is the rapture, and when our Lord comes back way over here. So there's a lot going on between the sixth trumpet and seventh trumpet, if you can see that here. Excuse me. So once Antichrist comes out, and we've had this destruction of Gog and Daniel 8 over here, these 10 nations form down into 4 regions. Antichrist comes up, overthrows the 3 regions. We start into the beast system, okay, just as I'm showing you down here, okay, same thing. This is the same set of events that's up here, okay. But what does he tell us in Daniel? From the time the continual burnt offerings are stopped to the sanctuary or to abomination is 1290 days. So from the time the continual burnt offerings are stopped to abomination is 1290 days. So that's why they stopped the 30 days prior to the signing of the treaty, because he's going, once Antichrist comes out, he's going to take control. You're only going to exalt him. So you're going to exalt him, nobody else. The continual burnt offerings will stop. You will start to, the world will start to actually exalt this supernatural being that's come out of Gog, because you have a death of destruction of Gog on the 6th seal here. He's being resurrected into Antichrist on the 6th trumpet. And so when the world sees this, they're going to awe and wonder at this. And so when the 7th year signing of that treaty, which is Trump's treaty, Kirchner's treaty that's out there, it's not signed yet. It won't be a factor until it is, and that will happen around April 20th of 2024. And when that occurs, the 2 witnesses will appear, and they prophesy for 1260 days. But then Jeremiah starts getting into some extremely explicit things. So on April 9th of 2025, based on Jeremiah 52:6, we see a famine that's severe, and there's no food to be found in Jerusalem, and that shortly after that, on May 10th of 2025, the houses in Jerusalem are destroyed and burned. The walls are broken down, the residue of the people are taken away, the city is breached, and the president, the first president, Rivlin, is captured on the plains of Jericho. His eyes are plucked out, the sons are killed, and Rivlin is taken to Babylon. Okay? And that's interesting, because what did it say? He was the king for 11 years. So if you go into Jeremiah 52, you look at Zedekiah, you realize that he reigns for 11 years. And how long did Revlin reign? Or how long will he reign if he's taken away in 2025? He'll reign 11 years, because he became a president in 2014. So I think it lines up on that, and I think it's important that we look at this in this way, because if this is truly the case, then we can start to understand what's coming in front of us, and we can actually start to see the dates that they come up on. That's why I keep bringing back to these connections. So if you look at Jeremiah 25, it says something really important. In the 4th year of Jehoiakim, which I say is Netanyahu, so now we're talking from 2021 to 2025, this would be the 4th year of Jehoiakim is the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar. Well, why is that the case? Nebuchadnezzar's been going back for years here on all this. So why now is he only the 1st year in the 4th year of Jehoiakim? Because if you go to that chart, you realize that in 23-24 we're going to see a destruction of Erdogan and his 10 nations, and that in 24 he's going to resurrect. And so the first year of Nebuchadnezzar would be the 4th year of Jehoiakim, because Jehoiakim would be the 25th or 2025. The first year of Nebuchadnezzar runs from 2024 to 2025. So when this king is destroyed here, he's in 2025. Okay. But Erdogan is going to die, be resurrected, and sign that treaty in 2024. And that resurrectional event will happen just prior to him stopping those continual burnt offerings. So that lines up with what I was talking about, that 11 years. When this king of Israel or Judah, this Rivlin, is in his last year, the 11th year, we know that we're in the end time when Antichrist is on the ground, because it clearly tells us it's his first year. So in the 4th year of Netanyahu, from 2021 to 2025, from 2024 to 2025, that is the first year of Antichrist. So how often do you see 2 kings of Israel line up, where one king comes in 2014, his term is over in 7 years, and in 2021 we see a second king come in. He talks about these 2 kings, both these dates line up, and then when you go to Nebuchadnezzar, you realize that he was brought into power in 2002, and if you go to that one thing where it talks about 23 years, 2002 plus 23 years is 2025. So this is extremely important, that we line these numbers and dates and timestamps up so that we can see what's actually coming in front of us. So during tribulation, between the signing of the covenant of death and abomination, this King Revlin is going to perish. Well, he's not going to perish. He's going to be captured on the plains of Jericho. His eyes are going to be removed. His sons are going to be killed. And he's going to be taken to Mystery Babylon. Wow. Which is Pergamus, Turkey. And when you get into abomination, which happens 3.5 years from the signing of the covenant of death, which is on July 19th, 2027, you have abomination. Desolation, abomination. And right after that, we see the 2 witnesses perish. So 1260 days after the signing of the covenant of death, you move 1260 days forward, abomination occurs, the 2 witnesses perish, they're resurrected in the streets 3.5 days later. We start to walk into that end of the Shemitah cycle, which was way over here. Oops, let me do that differently. That Shemitah cycle starts here on September 7th of 2021, and that ends here on September 1 through the 1st through the 3rd in 2027, and then we start into that millennial period. Wow, look what happens right there. The Lord comes back on the 7th trumpet, on the Feast of Trumpets, on October 2nd and 3rd of 2027. I say it happens on the 2nd. That's why we don't know what day or hour or anything, because it's a 2-day event, but we're talking about the fulfillment of the fall feasts now. The Feast of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, the Feast of Tabernacles, okay? So this is important that we understand what he's doing here and why he's showing us these things, because he's fulfilling the fall feast at this point. And so once these two witnesses perish and we start to move into that millennial last 1,000 years, we see the Lord come back. We see the rapture of the people from great tribulation, the elect, the saints, and the martyrs. And then we start into the marriage. Okay? And if you come into the marriage, this is extremely important. So once the Lord comes back, what happens? The seventh trumpet happens on Revelation 15:1. And then he hands the 7 bowls of God's wrath out, and he starts to pour the bowls out. And so the four bowls are dropped out on the earth, and it takes care of the green grass and the all the plants and the sea life and all that. And then and then the poisoning of the water, wormwood falls on the fourth bowl. And then the 5th bowl is poured out, and Mystery Babylon is destroyed, which I say is Pergamus, Turkey, or the seat of Satan. It also tells you that in the second letter, that the seat of Satan is Pergamus, Turkey, and that if you go into Revelation 17 through 19 and even into 20 and into 16, because that's when the bowls are dropping, it talks about them dropping the 5th bowl on Mystery Babylon, and that the 6th bowl will be poured out, and that the battle of Armageddon will occur with all the nations. And we start to see the wicked then, cleaned away. We have that marriage of the 15 days, or the shortened half of the second half, or the 1335 days. And then we get into where right after that, the 7th bowl is poured out. The world is cleansed. The Feast of Trumpets over here, we've been raptured to heaven, so we're not flesh anymore. At that point, we're spiritual. They're dropping down and cleansing the world down here, but we're in heaven, so that's not affecting us, and it won't affect us until he brings his kingdom back to earth after the 1,000 years, and he unites it with earth and New Jerusalem. And so this is sort of how this chart works, and I wanted you to sort of see how Jeremiah's prophecies are added into this. Okay, and if you start to actually go in here and you start to look at Jeremiah's prophecies and how they affect us from past to future, you're going to start to see these timelines set up here in front of you. And so the next 7 years is going to be an interesting time. I say the first seal was broken on Yom Kippur on October 9th of 2019, and that from that time we've started into the sorrows. And as we move into June 30th, we're going to see a major ramping up of what I call the Daniel 8 war, which I believe will happen by the fall of 2021, around that Shemitah, or that start of the sabbatical year. He'll gain his Ottoman crown. He'll do all these things as he starts to move down into Egypt, and then he'll end up in Israel. He'll be destroyed, and then we will start to see that Antichrist rise. So hopefully this gives you a little insight on how Jeremiah affects end days, and how Jeremiah lines up with all the prophets. Okay, we're just talking about Daniel and Psalm and Jeremiah and Revelation, but we're also talking about Ezekiel and Isaiah and all these other prophets, and how these things all line up with each other. But if you go into Jeremiah, he gives you date stamps. Okay, and so if you look at those date stamps that I'm talking about, if you get in here and you start looking at this, why is he saying these things? In the 9th day of the 4th month of this year of Nebuchadnezzar, of this king, if Revlin's the Zedekiah in his 9th year, in the 10th month of the 10th day, this is going to happen. It is riddled in Jeremiah. The whole book is riddled with dates. He must be doing this for a reason. I think he does. I think he wants to bring us back here. And I think when you start to actually see these dates and how they line up with this chart that I've been building, you'll start to realize that, wow, this is all coming up. And I don't know whether I'm right until Daniel 8 happens. Everybody that knows anything is waiting for this ram-goat war right now. We're waiting for the Kurds to join Iran, and that Erdogan is going to push them out of Syria, Iraq, and Turkey down to Baghdad and the Shush Iran area. And when they get around that province of Elam, or Ulai, or Elam, in the river of Ulai, and it tells you in Daniel 8 clearly, when the ram is standing on the river of Ulai, next to the city of Shushan, which is Shush, Iran, the Turkey will come over and crush them. And I believe that will happen by the fall of 2021. So hopefully this gives you a little insight. I didn't mean to go so long with it, but there's a lot of information to cover. And if you start to break down Jeremiah, you'll start to realize that the book works back and forth from the summary of 52 all the way back through the other chapters. And so when you start to look at that, you're going to realize, wow, okay, he may not tell you these dates in 52, but if you go back to the time he's talking about in, let's say, Jeremiah 39 or 28 or 46, he a lot of times will give you these time stamps that I'm talking about. You know, in this month, in this year, of this date, this is happening. If this is actually affecting us from past to future, which I always said it does, he shows us in the past what's coming, then we should be able to look at these dates and know what's coming up. And we should also look at these dates and be fearful of what is coming and fear the Lord and realize that he's in control of this. But to realize that these major players are having seriously a lot of things happening to them, especially this first king of Israel. He's going to go into bondage. He's going to be taken captive. His family's going to be destroyed, and he's going to be carted away into Mystery Babylon. There's not a thing he can do about it. I don't care if he knows ahead of time. These prophecies will not change. Just as Peter denied Lord 3 times, he told him, you're going to deny me 3 times. Oh, no, I won't. No, I won't. Yes, you will. And he did. Erdogan will make it to Israel. There's nothing you can do to stop him. God will get him there. You just can't stop him from doing God's judgment against his people. So these things are going to happen, and there's no way around this stuff. So God bless everybody. Hopefully this gives you some insight. You can look at the charts. I'll post them on my site. So there's a PDF so you can blow them up and actually see the dates, the timestamps, what's coming. There's a lot more going on in Jeremiah than I've covered here. But to get through this in an hour, to show you the connections, to show you how these 2 kings of Israel reflect the 2 kings that are there today, Netanyahu and Rivlin, and how Nebuchadnezzar reflects Nebuchadnezzar, or Erdogan reflects Nebuchadnezzar as the Babylonian king or the Syrian that's going to end up in Israel, and how these time stamps of the times they come into office to the time they're either removed from power, or the 23 years from the time Erdogan was prime minister in 2002 to the time Revlon is removed from power and taken away to Babylon. That's 23 years. That's from 2002 to 2020, 2025. and this is the 11th year of that king, and the 4th year of the other king. That can't just be coincidence. There must be a reason for this. And I'm trying to figure out the answers. So hopefully this makes some sense. I tried to bring value to understanding of what is coming in the next 7 years. And I've been saying for a while, as we start to break these chapters and these books open, they'll start to fill in the holes. Someday I'm going to get to Isaiah and add his information in here. And, all these prophets, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Daniel, all these guys, Isaiah, all these guys mattered. Okay? They're all telling you the same things. They don't contradict each other. And that's what I keep saying. You've got to line them up. And you can't. If you take Jeremiah, Daniel, Isaiah, Revelation, Ezekiel, and all the other prophets, and you've lined them up, they do line up. And they make sense if you know what to look for. God bless you all. Find the narrow door. Find the Lord Jesus. He's the only way to the Creator. You cannot get to heaven without the Son. And this is why the Jews are going to go under judgment, because they do not believe that Jesus was the Son of God. And this is why Rivlin and all these people are going to be under judgment, severe judgment, where a third of them will die by famine, a third of them will die by sword, or be taken into captivity, and a third will be taken away as a remnant. Because only a third of them figured out that the Son is the way to the Creator. So figure it out and get your oil in your lamp, because the next 7 years is going to be intense. God bless you all. Have a great night.